I think what we're continuing to see is that, you know, holistically across the American experiment, typically younger people have been more liberal in their younger years and then have grown into more conservative beliefs. But what we're seeing relative to millennials now is there's kind of a persuasion that's starting to see that kind of applying their biblical beliefs and seeing that coincided specifically we see with the Democratic Party. And it's just very fascinating to see how millennials are gravitating more and more towards what the Democratic Party has kind of gravitated towards, simply because they're tired of fighting some of these cultural wars that they grew up around, i.e. the abortion debate, i.e. death penalty.
Yeah. So even in the church, do you think that the abortion debate, the debate over sexuality, that's not really something that the millennials in the church are interested in fighting?
So even in the church, what's staggering is 68% of evangelical Christian millennials favor same-sex marriage. And so that's a staggering number of individuals that, if they believe the Word of God to be true, to be a lamp unto their feet and a light to their path, have decided that relative to what's Paul saying in 1 Corinthians 6 or Romans 1 is not necessarily a light that they're willing to walk through.
Wow. So what do you attribute this to? Is it just maybe lack of biblical exposure to biblical teaching on the subject, or is there something else going on here?
I think there is a biblical illiteracy that's been documented among millennials, and I think that's just documented holistically among Christians, period. But I think what we're continuing to see is that millennials put relationships at a premium. They are more than likely to go to great lengths to protect their relationships, because you have to remember, millennials grew up in a very broken world. The relationships were being broken relative to their families. We were always at war. That there were always just an economic precarious situation that they entered into the workforce. And so there's that sense of brokenness. But out of that brokenness, they've placed a great premium on relationships. And I think what you see with millennials is they know many of these same-sex attracted, these homosexual people, and they're gravitating towards forsaking the biblical injunctions and towards restoring the relationships and agreeing with them, and what many would consider outside of biblical orthodoxy.
I want to return to something that we were talking about earlier, and that is the participation or the lack of participation in the electoral process. And something you said, that you saw these protests at the Democratic National Convention, and it seems that you've got people that they are all too willing to go to the streets and to protest over any number of things, but you just kind of wonder, do these people really show up at the ballot box?
So statistics would say that they're not. And so one of the things that protests offers, it offers instant gratification. I can do X in order that I can see a result Y, which is media attention, which is garnering the likes on Facebook or on various other social media avenues. And so there's the instant gratification that can come from protesting in the streets or being able to post something controversial to take a stand on an issue. But what you're not seeing, what doesn't happen, is in voting, there's not the instant gratification that can come. That your vote quite literally could be on the losing side. And what we're seeing with millennials is there's an increasing sense that voting doesn't yield that instant gratification, therefore they're not voting.